I'm Brent Leary.
Paul Greenberg.
I think I've said this a time or two before, but we are the CRM players.
Luckily, I'm so old at this point, I don't remember whether I did or not.
I know I did because I literally had said it about 100 times already today for reasons you guys really don't have to worry about. But we're
No,
here. We're glad to be here. And we're glad if anybody else joins us to be here.
so to speak.
Well, we know one person is going to be joining us, one other person.
Who? What? We have another person on the show coming out. Like when? When did we? We finally got a guest after 12 years. Thank God. Our
Well,
first guest ever.
And we've been stonewalling because we cannot have an official start to the show unless
Oh,
wow.
wow.
Woo.
He's going medieval on us.
Yeah, and not the Pulp Fiction way, which I'm glad.
No.
Not the case. It's
Well,
and we
hey,
don't even need a translation for that one, although he must be referring to you.
No. No. He's obviously just talking to somebody else and he happened to write it in a comment.
Well, good lordship to you, Sven.
That's right. Good lordship to you, sir.
Is it
Sir
like
Sven?
good?
Sir
Is it
Sven?
Lordship Day? Maybe it's Good Lordship Day. I don't know.
Sir Sven, Knight of the Scandinavian Templars.
Wow, that went a long way. Let's see, what is he saying here?
You're
always
very
good to have
kind
Sven.
and gentlemanly, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it is going to be an interesting day with hour, I guess, because we've had a guest. This guest has been on before, but he was in a different role than he is now, which is kind of cool. Well, it's kind of cool, but there is going to be a bit of a contentious nature to this one.
Potentially, anyway. We'll see.
Potential. Yeah,
Keep in mind, it's only an employer for him.
Yeah, it's a way of life for me, but that's
Mm-hmm.
we'll tell you who it is in a bit. Oh, let's see. We got he's
Hey, how are you, my friend?
He's one of our newest members of the Happier Hour crew.
And he's studying sports marketing now. He's got himself a path to a degree in sports marketing. He's on his way. He's quite the guy. Fact, I'm going to make sure that our guest and he meet up. I should have done that a while ago since I told him I would. Right.
Well,
but I'm
reminder.
Just merely acknowledging myself as a flawed human being. Right. So
we're all flawed human beings. So yes. No,
not if we're going to try to achieve Sven's level of
lordshipness.
Hello. That's right, lordshipness.
Oh, he's in Philly? Oh. I grew up about 30 minutes from Philly, in Wilmington, Wilmington, Delaware. I've been in the South way too long. Yeah, he's thanking you already. There it is.
Just make sure I follow through.
Yeah, that's right. So before we bring our guest, and actually before we even tell you who he is, a couple things came up this week, right? We wanted to touch on before we dig in with our guest. This is kind of going off the board a little bit, but what did you think of the $12 billion investment Intuit made in MailChimp?
Well, I mean, basically, they seem to have bought it lock, stock, and barrel. You know what? I have a hard time saying, is it worth it or is it not? I mean, look, MailChimp's clearly a highly successful platform. It's used by millions of small businesses, probably tens of millions. And that's just a guess, but around the world. But $12 billion is a lot of money. But the way I look at all these investments, given I'm not a financial analyst, is somebody was willing to offer it and somebody was willing to take the offer. So who am I to say it was not the right number, right? It's the right number for the person offering and the right number for the people taking it. So, and they're the only ones that matter. right in this one. So, do I think it's a good move by Intuit? I think it's fine. I don't actually know what Intuit intends to do with it exactly. Um, up the ante on their emails. I just don't know what they're going to do with it. So I haven't really looked into it too deeply. What do you think? I mean, I don't have a profound opinion on it. Let's just say.
Well, you can't say that $12.5 billion is chump change, but you can say it's chimp change. I've been waiting to say that all week.
That's what this is about. This is literally a setup for a one-liner.
I've been waiting all these last 3 days to be able to say that, but I mean, seriously.
Does it feel good now that you said it, by the way?
Nah, not really. I kind of feel a little disappointed in myself, actually, for thinking it was that big a deal and then saying it. And now I have to live with the consequences. But we'll move on. We'll press forward. It's still no worse than McHale's Navy, so I'll probably put that down. But, I was thinking about this. Salesforce bought Exact Target in 2013 for $2.5 billion, and people were losing their minds. It was just an unheard of amount of money. But think about it. That was kind of one of the foundational pieces to what they are today and what they've done. And that was $2.5 billion. So Intuit buys MailChimp for $12.5 billion. We may be looking back at this 10 years from now and saying, oh my goodness, it was a steal. It was a bargain. Who knows? One thing we do know is that every time a new channel comes on, a new network, a new type of anything, we all say, oh, that's going to be the end of this. It's going to be the end of making phone calls. It's going to be the end of sending direct mail. It's going to be the end of email. And there are probably about double the amount of emails going out today than there was when Salesforce bought Exact Target. So, yeah, it's a lot of money. They can afford it, but I don't think, if you want to serve, you kind of be a full service platform to small business, and we're talking like very small businesses. Intuit is maybe just solidified their stamp as being the biggest provider of things, technology for those very small micro business kind of people.
Look, I mean, honestly, we use Quicken, we use QuickBooks. I mean, so we're always using something that either is or was Intuit at some point, right? So one way or the other, they're astonishing at how smart a company they are. I don't doubt them ever about what they do. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. If Intuit offers us $12.5 billion, it is the end of CRM Playaz.
You'll never hear from us again.
Right. We can promise you that.
You will. Matter of fact, if they make us an offer in the midst of this show right now,
we shut the show down right on the spot.
No other words will be said.
That's right. We will be silent.
But I'm guessing that you do not have to worry about that.
So. At that point, we'll probably go get knighted by the Queen in England, right? If we have,
and it would go from Lord Day to Good Lord Day.
Good Lord, right?
Wow, that was maybe worse than the.
I know we're heading to McHale's Navy territory.
Wow, that was rough. Okay, so other thing we wanted to talk about. One of the other things we wanted to talk about was Oracle had their earnings call. And I saw the transcript, and I sent the transcript over to the venerable one. I know you're going to say Steve Gilmore.
You sent it to a Salesforce guy.
I knew that was coming.
Yes, I know you knew. You're setting me up for it, pretty obviously.
Yeah.
You even said venerable ones. I picked it up.
Yeah. Prince had a song called "The Beautiful Ones."
No, I didn't.
Can see. Yeah, I could see the venerable ones. Somebody do that. Whereas Paul and Steve, that'd be great. But anyway, so saw the transcript from the earnings call, and something really stood out big time for both of us.
And what might that have been?
There was like 2 letters that we didn't see mentioned at all together.
Let's see. What could that have been? Could it have been BT because they didn't mention Vermont? right?
No, it wasn't that. Let's try two other letters. One, let me give you a hint. One is X.
Okay. Let's see. XF for like extra fine. No, not for
No.
12 million, Sven. 12 billion.
Yeah.
Billion.
Yeah, we're
But
not cheap.
that's right. 12 million. No, we're not kidding you. The curve. 12 billion.
Oh.
No, it's not, I'm not. I've always been a Prince fan. That's not a Prince level. That's all.
So let's just cut to the chase.
Yes.
No mention of CX at all.
You
I
know,
was,
it's funny. I was reading Bob Evans' thing this morning when he was one of his things. He got acquired, by the way, to his great and congratulations for him. Really.
absolutely. Was it for
Uh,
12 billion?
didn't disclose it, but I somehow doubt it, given that I hadn't heard of the company that acquired him. Um, anyway, and he was writing about the Oracle Cloud, and it had, it's talking about an industry focus and so on and so forth, and then Oracle earnings and the cloud, and no mention of CX. And I mean, ultimately, for whatever reason, which I don't quite understand, even though Oracle is going to be doing some stuff today with analysts in the CX side, they don't talk about it. They just Larry
It's
brings it up when he seems to have to, but beyond that, I'm not sure he really. It's sort of there's Oracle and then there's Oracle CX, and that's over here, right?
yeah.
And
I mean,
even different
Oracle.
in Fusion.
Yeah. Well, Oracle. I mean, to be truthful and honest about it, they got so many things going on. Of course, their bread and butter is still. I guess it's still database. I would assume. But I mean, there's the databases, there's cloud services, there's back office, there's it's hardware. What the autonomous database? You got to remember that. You can't leave that up. So there's a ton of stuff. They break down like ERP was mentioned, and
Yep, Fusion
growth rates
ERP.
for that. Yeah, but so it's just that there's so much potential. I mean, they have a really great offering, all things considered, all the stuff that they have, and it doesn't even get a mention. That's
I know
maybe it's working its way up to that because it is relatively new compared to all the other stuff they have. But
I mean, they've
it'd
had
be nice.
Oracle CRM as long as I've been in CRM. I'll say that. I mean,
Well, I
literally as long
remember.
as I've been.
I remember. Was it version 8? That was brutal. That was the project where I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers and Michael Thomas was at Oracle, and we did this joint company project. We shed some blood on that one, but that was a long time ago. That was like 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, look, CX. Look, if I'm looking at CX from the standpoint that where it sits now and what I know of it, and what I hope Larry and Rob and Ariel will talk about next Monday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. They are ultimately, if I'm looking at let's say the big five, they're the ones competing with Salesforce. When I'm looking at the offering, straight with the offering, the two of them are the ones that will even. I don't know if they're butting heads in deals that much or not. I really don't. I'm unaware. But the reality is, if I'm looking at it sheerly on the basis of the offerings and the quality and the capability, the company most qualified to nail that lead spot, and if anyone's going to take it from Salesforce, although we have some interesting news on that too. It will be Oracle at an enterprise level because it's that higher quality and offering. And plus, it's that, and this is going to sound like an odd word, but it's not, that thoughtful an offering. It's basically offering the things that you need to be offering at this time.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that in time, CX is going to make its way up the ranks and get recognition. But I guess fighting for recognition amongst all these other business units that are bringing in billions of dollars, it's tough. But we're looking forward to the day when that happens.
Well, you know what? Next week, right? Next week we'll hear more.
Well, Yeah, well, I think we're going to hear a little bit more about it. Matter of fact, why don't we just do this? Because we don't want to, our guest, I see him in the green room,
Okay.
and we don't want him to wait too long. But why don't we do this? Because we do have a big week coming up next week.
Yes, we do.
Matter of fact, the two companies that we kind of been talking about a little bit here, they have a big week coming up. So Monday and Tuesday, put them on your calendars. Mark it, check it twice, whatever. Oracle is, and we're using our little terminology for these events. And since Oracle is going to be having, I think it's called Oracle Live, and Larry Ellison is going to be talking about the future of CRM. So we got to give him credit. Last year, he did his very first kind of CRM broadcast, and here's his second one. So maybe this is the start of really CX and CRM becoming a bigger, more important piece to the Oracle puzzle. So next Monday, he's going to be doing his future of CRM talk. It'll start at 6:30 East Coast time. That's kind of like dinner time. So we're going to do CRM Playaz dinner in a show, simulcast of Larry Ellison's talk. So we are going to be starting at 6:15 East Coast time on Monday. You may see me with something to eat because that is about dinner time. So why don't we just get together, get something to eat, and watch Larry talk about CRM for an hour or so, right?
Burgers. Burgers. Be burgers. So here's the thing. So this is Larry, Rob Tarkoff, and Ariel Kelman, who's their CMO, who's an ace CMO. He really is a good one. And so that will be great. And then the next night, of course, we have the watch party with Mark Benioff and Salesforce.
Right.
And that we will do. You have something
Yeah, I got a visual.
Well, bring it up, man.
Because not only are we going to hear from Larry and Rob and hear what they have to say.
Unscripted.
Yeah. I just love this picture of Des, by the way. So after they're done with their talk, the formal portion, we are glad to have our buddy Des Cahill join us to talk about maybe some of the things we heard during that hour. Maybe some additional questions, some thoughts. Maybe we'll get him to bust out the guitar, because if you recall last year when Des joined us on the show, he broke out a guitar and started playing and singing. So maybe we'll get that.
We won't hold him to it, but nonetheless, he is coming on, and he is one we always will request. He's awesome. He's an awesome guy.
All right. So, as you were saying,
well, we have the watch party, which is at a more standard time. So it's at 12:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time, where Mark's going to give his keynote, and then following Mark, you have the. There we go. Right, ready. Whoa! Look what that says.
Wow, that's not good.
No, that isn't. Make a correction on the fly there. Right. So that is John Tashik, one of the best people in the universe, basically, as a human being, and also the SVP of Market Strategy for Salesforce, despite popular belief. Right. And he will come on and doing similar what Des did, and will come and speak with us after the March speech. And then we're going to have we'll have the players in residence who will hopefully be on for both events, but at least the Salesforce Dreamforce event, Rebecca Wetterman and Anand Thakur, who will be on to provide their commentary along with ours. And we're then having an analyst panel, which is still TBD. We have the invitations out. We're waiting to hear. The one we have heard will be definitive, will be Dennis Pombriant, who most of you know is one of the biggest voices in the CRM industry. So
just to let you guys know, he is at Salesforce now.
Yeah, he just changed jobs this second.
Yeah.
He's moved jobs. So it's going to be big. I mean, these 2 nights are going to be big deals. And I will tell you, I don't have any real inkling. I have a little bit of an inkling of Salesforce's, not much, but I have a fairly good idea what Oracle's going to talk about. And it's in the title, but I'm not going to go into any details. They're not fully baked there. But I will tell you what Oracle's doing and what they're going to talk about generally when it comes to releases and things like that. It's really important. It's an important inflection point in capabilities being released into a CX or CRM or engagement product. And it's one of the smarter ones I've seen for a while. And we'll talk more about it later.
Yeah, and
a little later on Monday.
It's kind of a big deal when you get Larry Ellison making this kind of face. Like,
that's right.
He knows he's the man. He knows something that we don't know, but he's going to let us know on Monday. So you can make that face when you got that going for you. You know what I mean?
All right. There's other things we could talk about, but we don't need to.
No, because our guest is in the green room. And I have to say, he's not wearing any outward gear. I don't think I see anything that would show some sort of an allegiance, but he's still our buddy, and we're glad to have Charlie Shin join us because it's been a while. It's been about 10 years at least.
There's the man.
There he is. How's it going?
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Are you kidding? This is like about time we had you again, man. It's been. I think last time we had you wasn't it in Daytona?
I think it was in Daytona, live in person, outdoor, right by the track.
That's right. That was where we were literally baking.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we were, but Charlie was in his Miami Vice cool wear, so he was looking nice and cool,
So my friend, last time we spoke with you were at Major League Soccer. Today you are what is it? BP of business
Data strategy and analytics at the Colts.
Business strategy and analytics.
Yeah.
Right at the Indianapolis Colts. We'll get into the. All I'm going to say is, I'm a Giants fan, so I'm staying away from what's going to happen later throughout this thing. But I
was just going to say, or as I like to refer to them this week, the enemy.
Frenemy.
That's right. So, first of all, what's the transition been even like? I mean, it's got to be, because look, you were running fan engagement for soccer, right? For football. Now you're back in football, but a different kind altogether. And it's the Indianapolis Colts, which is the Midwest, even though I know you're not there, but it's a Midwestern team. And it's just a whole other, I would imagine, environment. So tell us about the difference.
Absolutely. Well, I am at the Indianapolis, so I made the transition, and that's been fantastic, right? Living in Jersey and commuting into the city for the last 16 years, and having spent almost average of 3 hours on the road, taking bus in and out, and never realizing how bad that was until you actually come to a place where it only takes me 15 minutes back and forth, spending 30 minutes and getting my 2 hours and a half back with my family has been phenomenal. So
you literally now full-time live in Indianapolis.
Welcome to my office in Indy.
Wow.
Awesome. So I am full-time and moved completely.
Wait, before you get there. So when you first hit Indy, because I remember my impression, I hadn't been to Indianapolis for 30 years when I first hit it. And I remember when they said, it's going to be rush hour now. And when I saw rush hour, it's like, that meant two people who weren't even in cars crossing the street. Right.
So it's a traffic light for us.
I know.
Right.
I know.
It's a traffic stop. It's not a rush hour. So
that transition must have been literally shocking.
It's been great. Just again, getting that 2 hour and a half back. And then being able to spend that time with family a little bit more, right? That's been phenomenal. People are so welcoming. I was walking out of Starbucks one day and this lady just gives me a big smile with the great, biggest kind of good morning, and I almost turned around and saw if there's, she was greeting someone else behind me. We don't see that in New York, right?
No.
Wow.
So that was definitely different experience. But all in all, it's been phenomenal just being able to come out here and being part of an organization that has such a vision and putting a lot of commitments behind turning the organization into being more consumer friendly and fan centric. So it's been a great journey from a work standpoint. The transition of working at a league level into the club is something that I've always wanted to kind of explore as my next phase of my career. Having been with the club, managing 20 somewhat plus markets and their clubs, which gave me a really depth of great different experiences, but never you don't have that the connection that you feel that you have when you're actually in one of the clubs and you're part of that market and that your fans, and you're trying to build that and have a little bit more ownership of that versus just being part of an organization that it's more of a B2B model, C model, versus now I'm into B2C model, which is directly building that relationship with your fan base in your market. So I think in that sense, it got me closer to the consumers, and just came back from the game last weekend despite the loss. I almost got a chill, going through that whole game, just being part of that and feeling the excitement and looking at our fans and the enjoyment that they had. And that's exactly what I wanted. So so far it's been fantastic. I mean, certainly there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And then obviously next week we got to beat Rams in the game as well. But it's been a great start.
All right. Well, you went there. I didn't. I'm going to refrain for the time being. And I would love to hear, like, you're dealing with analytics on the business side. You're not going, or are you dealing with analytics on the
No, it's more on the business side.
Okay,
Definitely.
on the business side. So talk a little bit about how analytics are viewed differently from MLS, where you were, and I guess you were at the league level at MLS. But what does analytics mean to you and the Colts, and how does that compare to what it meant to you in MLS?
Sure. I think being at the league, it was more about just the overall kind of approach in terms of looking at data strategies or analytic, because those are really just a foundational tools to help address the experience for our fans and our customers. So it would be the great analogy would be, when I was at the league, I looked at through the lens of being B2B2C model and trying to figure out what can be done to support our clubs, which is the kind of the next layer that have the direct relationship with the fans, and try to help them improve that. Now, being with the clubs, it's B2C model, right? So we certainly have the NFL supporting us in that perspective. But for me, it's now looking at directly to our fans and our business and try to see what can we do to drive that relationship directly with our fans. So that's kind of the area that I'm focusing on is, how do we have that direct impact versus when I was with the league, it was more of how do we help the club so that they could build a better relationship with their customers.
So look, one thing with you is you're one of the most innovative minds I've met, period, much less sports specific, just generally. And to the credit of MLS, they gave you room to do some of that. So the EA thing, this thing you did with EA Sports, which I found to be like a work of genius, really. And the fact I still remember, even though I don't remember what the specific project was, that you realized how important things like jobs to be done were, and you just sort of implemented a jobs to be done programs in the MLS level, just like that, where everyone else would treat it more as an intellectual exercise than it would as an actual programmatic and an active and executable approach. How much room do you have to do that with the Colts, and have you started any of that? And if you have, to the extent you can talk about it, what have you done?
Absolutely. I think a lot of the things that I'm looking to do here is really from the experiences and the success that I've kind of saw working at the MLS and trying to see how we could implement that, right? I think the benefit of working at MLS was the league was very still on an early stage, and they still are, right? And there's a lot of growth opportunities. So when you look at from their maturity standpoint, it's very early stage versus NFL is very mature league. A mature market, mature fans. You have a lot of fans. So a lot of the things that we've done at MLS was really about building scales. How do we go and get more fans so that we could build the market and grow that market versus when you look at MLS, the NFL, the market's there, but it's more about how do we then drive the depth of that relationship and make it a little bit more stronger, focusing on retentions and re-engagements and engagements and so on. So trying to take a lot of that learning from the MLS and try to apply that into the NFL. And, what I've noticed is despite the market growth and the size that the NFL has, there's still a lot of areas of business where the lens that's viewed on is very revenue driven or product driven, right? Because that's what they've done over the years. And especially with looking at so much competition that's coming out into the market and how the newer generation consume and just how they spend their time, there's a huge opportunity for us to make a shift in order to adjust to the needs of those emerging younger demographic fan base that we need to address. And that's taking the lens that's been focused on product oriented over to being a consumer oriented. And that just means not just from a marketing standpoint, but how does that impact everything that we're doing from a business standpoint, from how we develop our products, how we measure ourselves from a KPI standpoint, how do we go and build a sponsorship program from that standpoint. So that whole shift is something that's going to take some time and a lot of educations around the organization to make that shift, because there's still, everyone recognizes the importance of being a consumer centric. They certainly speak about it, but then when you actually go and try to do their day to day, they're still tied to the old way of doing business, which is more of a product driven and product oriented. So it's going to take some time, but it starts with establishing a clear vision and an objective for the organization that is fan centric and which has been done here. And then it's really working towards defining, understanding that customer, establishing that market segment, and then most importantly, I think working on a KPI for the organization, because everyone behaves the way that they're measured, especially with an organization. So are we measuring the way that is oriented through being that consumer oriented approach?
What's been like maybe the biggest change since the pandemic and how everything has changed from personal to business? But what's been like the biggest change from an organizational standpoint when it comes to, just seeing things possibly different, seeing the relationship between, the organization and fans? Has that changed? Is that evolving because of what's taking place? And kind of what role does analytics play in helping that evolution take place?
Sure. I think there's definitely a huge change internally in terms of how we work. Right. In sports, traditionally was a in-person, face-to-face type of work environment where, there wasn't a whole lot of remote work that took place. But now, being forced to work online and virtually, I think that has given a little bit more flexibility and opportunity for them to realize that, this actually does work. Now, there needs to be some balance to that, but I think there's been a lot of positive coming out of kind of working virtually and collaborating, using a lot of the technology that comes across. And at the same time, I think there's been a huge adoption of technology from our fan base in terms of how they engage with our sports. And, we're starting to see that with growth of usage of club apps, for example, digital ticketing, another example, digital viewership, consumption of contents on our sites, all of that has kind of has gone up during the COVID, just because that was the only option that people had in terms of what they could do and how they could engage. So that kind of educated a lot of them to and forced them to using those new technologies to engage. And what's good about that is that now forces a lot of data that comes out of that, right? So people that might not have used digital ticketing in the past now is using digital ticketing and realizing, oh, this is pretty easy and accessible. Now we're able to kind of track their behaviors because they're able to use that digital ticketing. More data that we get, we're able to use that to gain better insights so that we could provide better personalizations and services. So it's a virtuous cycle, right? More data comes in, you become more innovative using that data and then put it back into our consumers. And that drives additional engagement to collect more data. So it's ongoing cycle of that experience. And that just helps us on a long term.
So I know, like, for example, in at the league level in Major League Baseball, they have, at least my opinion, they've had way too much control over what goes on with each individual team. So, the websites tend to be uniform. The way merchandising is handled tends to be pretty much through the league and down. And you know how it is. I mean, fans are passionate about the team, not the league. The league to them is just a thing that organizes the teams. That's it. I mean, they don't care about the league that much. In fact, the league is just most of the time considered a pain in the butt, right? So, but MLS seemed, partly because you were there, actually seemed to provide a bit more freedom to the teams and seemed to be more of an organization that tried to help than it did to control. Right. How are you dealing with the NFL on that?
They've been phenomenal. And I just recognize the reason why NFL is such a powerful sports league in the United States is just looking at what the league does to support the clubs has been more than what I had anticipated. Although I knew that they had the resource and financial resource as well as the human resource to really do what everything really they wanted. But having actually come into the fold and kind of looking at the stuff that they actually have built to support the clubs is far greater than what I've expected. And I think they're doing some amazing work and finding opportunities and leveraging that scale. I think that's what the opportunity that league has is the power of that scale that they could go and really negotiate on behalf of these individual clubs to get the best deal possible, whether it's from a procurement standpoint or from a sponsorship standpoint, where either they could help us reduce costs or they could help us actually gain more revenues than we would be able to do on our own by having that force to go out and negotiate as a total kind of value proposition. So I think in that sense, that's what the NFL has done over the years. And there's from a data analytics standpoint, I was talking to one of my colleagues and explaining them that I had about 6-7 years ago, I was talking to a peer who oversaw exactly the same role that I've managed at the MLS, which is kind of their data strategy role at the NFL. And back then, they didn't have any infrastructure, right? They're coming to us and going, hey, what you guys are doing? And that's when we started building our data warehouse and that infrastructure. And they're like, yeah, that's something we're looking into and wanted to do something similar. Fast, forward 5-7 years later, and now coming in here and actually looking at what they built, they're actually about 3 to 5 times past what the MLS has done in a shorter time because of their ability to, once they know that's the area that they want to focus on, they invest and they put manpower behind it. And they've built something that is so much greater than what they've actually had and more than what the MLS has built in that short time. So it just shows the capabilities that they have if they put their minds to it and focus on it. So that's been really insightful, kind of coming in from outside and looking at what the NFL has built over the years and the stuff that we could tap into.
One of the things I think I've harped on for years, and Paul may know where I'm going with this. I've been a Rams fan since I've been like 5 or 6 years old.
Know exactly.
I have never, I have never lived in LA or St. Louis, so I not going to get season tickets. But I love my team and I've loved them forever. And Fanatics can vouch for me on this. I've probably bought about 70 or 80 Rams hats, and I'm sporting stuff right. So my fandom is really, you can't knock it, but I don't think the Rams know it, because I have absolutely zero relationship with them, because all the stuff that I get that it's Rams paraphernalia does not come directly from them. It comes from Fanatics, and Fanatics has the relation. Are you looking at any ways that more of a direct to consumer market will be put in place? Because it seems like teams are really missing out on using the traditional methods of business, which is selling tickets, selling singles, selling season, selling when you get to the stadium. I don't do any of that, but I'm believe me, I'm spending my fair share.
Oh yeah, I believe you, because I've seen your collection. But here's the thing: they do have your information. That's the thing, is that we get all of that information from Fanatics, so we have access to it. It's just a matter of organization understanding in terms of how they look at their customer base, right? So a lot of times the teams will focus on, to your point, their ticketing, because that kind of takes up the lion's share of their business, and that's where they're going to be focused on. But imagine if we could switch that lens into being more consumer oriented, and we start calculating the customer lifetime values, or all of that, not just on ticketing, but all of the financial transaction that they spend across different products. Then you would actually pop up showing that, hey, you know what, this person haven't purchased any tickets, but he spent an average of $500 a year on merchandising. Like, he's up on
that's
that.
Like a month. That's a month's worth of hats, man. Are you kidding?
There you go. So what are we doing for that segment of people? But again, I think everyone agrees that's the ultimate direction that we're all kind of headed towards. But it's a big ship that we're trying to turn, and it's going to take time, even focusing on that KPI, because right now the KPI isn't based on consumer and their spending or their value. It's on, okay, what is the percentage of our season tickets sold? What is the renewal of our season tickets, right? So then obviously as an organization, that's what we're going to be focused on. And that needs to change. And in order for us to become more consumer centric, everything that we do has to be aligned with that customer, starting from the customer experience to how we're measuring them from a KPI standpoint.
They are missing out on a lot of money, man.
Oh my God, are they ever?
I remember, I think we were talking to Jonathan Becker over at San Jose Sharks. If you created a monthly subscription where I could see get my greedy little hands on the 80-year history of video of my team, are you kidding? Of course I'm going to subscribe to that. It
Exactly.
just feels like there are so many things that are being missed out on because the focus has been, like you said.
Here's a question then: if the Rams put out a package that had a flight and a hotel with a game ticket for a certain amount of dollars, would you take up on that offer?
I might, but this is I love this conversation. By the way, we're going to beat you guys on something. Just thought I'd put that in there. But I love that, there's that thought. But once again, that's their thought. There are so many people like me who maybe can't fly, or they don't want to fly, or they just don't want to be in a big crowd of people, but have money to spend on my team if you just let me do it. And it would be great to see that change. I think it sounds like it might be changing now, but just like, with the whole pandemic and people couldn't shop at the store, so they had to shop online. So all these companies started building these direct to consumer models. It would be awesome for these teams to also think like that and build these things out, because there's gold in their channels if they just took it. Yeah.
Look, I think it comes back to understanding your customers and making sure that you're providing their needs and addressing their needs. And it's not just about the segments of, based on their behaviors, but also there's a lot of the other components that we need to think about, which is the circumstance, because you might have certain needs, but based on circumstance, the purchase pattern could have a very different behaviors behind it because of those circumstances. So I think what technology and data is helping us is to be able to recognize those behaviors and circumstances that might pop up that can be identified using the proxies of data that's provided from technologies to recognize, hey, in this situation, you know what, we should offer him this, or hey, based on this situation, we should go on this, regardless of what segment that he falls into, because I think we'll all agree, Paul loves restaurants, right? And he goes, good, he loves dining, but I'm sure there's situations where, he'll go to 5-star dining for certain circumstance, but he's okay with, walk-in standing, restaurant in certain situations. But how do we recognize
as long as they're
that?
Michelin starred, I'm fine.
Yeah. So how do we recognize that and being able to come up with the right offer at the right time using the right channel, right?
Well, there's another dimension to it too. Although I remember we were at, I think it was in Atlanta at Seat, when Seat was at the Marriott Marquis that year. And we were in the lobby and we were talking with Bruce Colbert, who was going to be on a panel that I was running there. And Bruce was talking about, I can't remember who's the most influential Falcons fan or the most influential Cowboys fan, because Bruce is a Cowboys fan, but he's living in Atlanta. But that person never went to games, hardly bought anything, but had an enormous number of people who, if he said, look, I may not buy this, but you should, they would just go buy it, right? I mean, just because he said it, right? And I can't remember the exact number, but he alone, as a fan, had like 700,000 Twitter followers, that was for his fandom, not for anything else, right? And so, but nobody serves those people. And the funny thing is, one thing I've noticed about sports is they have a very peculiar view of influencers. The irony is, it was just something I was literally thinking about yesterday, because the irony is that, as I've said at many a Seat conference, and as each of us has said at many a Seat conference too, this is the only industry that has built-in advocates. You don't have to create advocates. They're literally sitting there waiting to be commanded and told what to do and where to go and how to what they get, to Brent's point. But you don't have to create them. There's millions of them. So
we do have to create them at a younger generations, right? Because this will not continue forever, right? We have newer generations coming up that has a very different consumption patterns than we do. I just came across an article that mentions there's now a subscription pass for a Taco Bell. What?
Wow.
Can you imagine?
No.
A pass that gives you access to one taco a day.
But that's really what's happening in your stomach.
But
what's happening in your head.
That's what these new generations are going to be used to, versus when we were in the back old days, it was very different in terms of how we consume. So it's they don't even know what VHS is.
No,
well, right.
I mean,
telling them you actually had to go to a physical store to rent a movie. They don't understand it. What do you mean you had to go outside to rent the movie? Just download it, or just voice the video on demand,
or hijack it.
Right. It doesn't make sense. So for them, when they're coming up with the very different behaviors of how they're consuming content and entertainments and all of that, it might not be what we're currently doing with our existing fans. And you need to make sure that we recognize, one, what that is. And then we got to start to build that relationship by building out the right engagement plans and right products that is tailored to their generations and their needs, so that this continues. Otherwise,
going to your point, I mean, it's how they distribute. As people who have been listening to Playaz in the last 3 or 4 months, this is what you just said is pretty much all I talk about, right? I don't have anything else. I mean, I'm talking about the transition of power, so to speak, buying and decision making from baby boomer and Gen X to millennials and Gen Y, right? And I mean Gen Z, and that transition does demand different patterns. It's interesting. The creation part's kind of well underway. Where it's really poorly done is distribution. And that's where people are really screwed up. And it goes right to the heart of your point. Look, I mean, ultimately, to me, the medium that's going to have the single most impact on everything is TikTok right now, and that's the way. And if sports teams aren't smart enough to be on TikTok, and a lot of them
guess what?
are.
Colts has the biggest follower on TikTok, so take that.
I'm not.
How many followers? Just out of curiosity, how many?
It's I think it's somewhere over. I don't know where they stand now, but I know the last report that we looked at, we have a character, our mascot Blue, which has the biggest follower ever in sports of football. So in our league. Yep.
Yeah, there it is.
Well, no, but that's critical now. But the other side is, though, I think sports, and again, it's something I'm just sort of mulling on, but has to get over the idea of an influencer, or how they think about influencers, as opposed to thinking about them as potential indirect impact on revenue. They think about them as, we have to stop them from hating us, right? So that's really not the way to think about influencers anymore. And, and if you actually understand, to your point, how millennials and Gen Z look at influencers, they don't look at influencers as the people who hate something. They look at people who like something, right? And that's much more toward the norm. And I think sports has had a very inverse relationship because the fans are so passionate, they get so upset, and I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Colts and other NFL teams understand when Colts fans are infuriated at something during a game, that lasts till the end of the game and maybe a couple hours afterwards. And that's it. They're still big Colts fans.
Oh, yeah.
Those are momentary. And it's because they love the team so much and they can't stand it. Just ask Brent about my rants about the Yankees when they're not winning, right? I mean, I'm ranting. Scott Jeffer and I are texting every night in the Yankee game, and most of the time we're both furious at something that's happening, right? So,
like they're going to feel on Sunday night. This is the perfect example of how they're going to be angry and going to be upset and all those kinds of things.
I'm dealing with that tonight. I've got that. I'm on Thursday Night Football against the Redskins of all things, right? Oh, excuse me, the Washington football team, which still.
Brent, I got your seat ready here. Just move up.
Yeah, Paul knows I tend to like watching Rams games by myself.
Yeah.
The last time I watched the Rams game was when I was actually in his place. And they won, and it still wasn't a very pleasant experience.
It was funny. I thought it was fun. Well, the thing is, that's how it works. Like at a certain point, I send a note to Brent saying, "You going into NCZ, which is the no comment zone, right?" And then I said, "I'll talk to you when you surface." And I just wait till he comes up and says something he messages me, and then I know, okay, it's passed. Whatever it is, good or bad, it's passed. If they win, it's pretty quick. If they don't win, it's sometimes the next day. Right?
So basically, you're not going to be hearing from him until Tuesday this week.
Yeah. He'll be hearing from me. That's a 1 o'clock game? About 4:01, I think.
I look. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so look, one thing with you is again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. Your hallmark is you're an innovator. It's literally.
I appreciate that. Yep.
Oh my God, Charlie, you're like an amazing innovator. Like you really you have this broad spectrum kind of view that allows you to innovate in areas that most other people wouldn't even consider, right? And so, how much room do you have to do? Look, I mean, obviously, someone thinks analytics, data. They sometimes don't equate that with innovation exactly. They may equate it with, okay, we have this, but innovation tends to be in most people's heads anyway. Creative spark, that pops up and say, oh, we should try this because, and then you go do it. But not because, the data says, because most people are thinking innovation will create new kinds of results, right? So how much room do you have to I'm not one of these people who believes in fast failure or any of that crap. That's just an excuse to me. Look, the idea is I don't believe in fail fast. I believe in succeed as quickly as possible, right? That's all. And maybe there'll be failures along the way, but you don't focus on failing fast. You focus on succeeding quickly, right? Always be patient, but never lose your impatience. That's the standing rule. So in terms of the Colts, I mean, how much room do you have to like test something, to like say, I have this idea, the data doesn't fully support it, but I think it would work. There's other things that are going on that may be a little bit like this. There are indicators, at least, that it would succeed. How much room do you have to do that kind of thing rather than, okay, data's saying this, this, and this. Let's try this, this, and this.
A lot. And I think it's starts with the top, being open-minded as well as committed to transformation. And that kind of trickles down across all of the departments where they don't have a set of way that they've been doing business that they're trying to continue to force, right? There's a lot of open-minded folks across different areas that wants to find a new ways for us to drive our business as well as transform to become more consumer-centric. And that means trying something different. We've tried different ways for data acquisition during the preseason that they've never done before. And they were open to different ideas, and we tried it. Some worked, some didn't work. And then we learn from that, and that gives us a foundation for what we need to do for next preseason. So I think they're very open to different ideas and new ideas. And that was one of the key reasons I've kind of selected and wanted to come to the Colts was I recognize that from top and from the ownership group all the way down to their top executive that gave me the confidence that, hey, if that's the culture and environment that I'm seeing, then that's a place I think I could have an impact on making a difference within the organization. So that was one of the key reasons for coming here. And so far, everyone's been very supportive of different ideas and approaches. And, like I said, it's learned, it's a trial and error. So not everything, some worked, some didn't, but even the ones that didn't work, at least we're getting a feedback of the learnings that can be used for future change.
Perfect.
Well, hey, this has really been a great conversation. And hey, don't feel bad about what happened Sunday. It happens to the best of us. And you're doing a great job. And just don't feel too bad about what's about to happen to your team.
So let's do this right on the air here. If the Colts win, next time we meet in person, you will buy me a dinner, all right? Or make it even better, a really nice whiskey, a glass of whiskey. Okay. And then if the Rams win, then I'll buy you a nice glass of whiskey. How about that?
I wouldn't take that bet if I was Rams. Tell me. He doesn't really like whiskey all that much.
We'll go back to the dinner then. We'll go back to the dinner.
I'm good with the dinner part. Yeah. So just make sure you bring your checkbook or your digital card.
Be prepared to make a reservation at Five Guys or a Burger Bar.
Yeah, I'm gonna go upscale, baby. I'm going the Chipotle upscale room. No,
that's right. Chipotle, the view at Chipotle,
and we'll add a side of guacamole into that.
That's right.
Yeah, there it is. All right, now this has been great, Charlie. It's great catching up to you. Good luck, in all sincerity. Good luck with everything you do with the Colts, except for this Sunday. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you down the road. Maybe we'll see what the teams look like at the end of the season.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start looking at my selection of restaurants to select from. But thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you guys, and hopefully we'll be able to see each other soon.
I can't wait. Well, I know. Fingers crossed. There's a live seat next year, and we can all go.
There you go.
Great.
I was actually down in Daytona for one of their events that Christine had, and I got to see a couple of old friends there. So it was nice. So it'll be really good to get the rest of the folks.
I actually do miss seat.
That was a great conference.
There. It's my all-time favorite conference. I liked it better than any conferences I ever chaired. I'll tell you that.
Yep.
Right. So
Wow. Okay.
Anyway.
And on that
All right.
note, on behalf of Charlie Shin. Oh, wait a minute. Something new they were going to do the show. Let's give our guest a round of applause.
Wow, Roadcaster.
There it is. All right.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of Charlie Shin, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players, and when you see this, you know it's over. It's over.